Hello, and welcome to the newest episode of the New Year's Six podcast. Today I'll be reviewing the Pac 12 and doing my 2023 conference preview. If you haven't watched the first three that I've done of these, just to review the format, going to start at the bottom of the conference, work my way up to the top of the conference, who I think is going to come in last, all the way up to who I think is going to come in first. And then I'm going to pick a breakout player on both offense and defense, some for every team. Someone I think is going to, be poised for a big year, someone who's going to step up at either the conference level or, in all of college football, whatever it ends up being. So that's how it'll go today. Kicking us off and looking at the Pac-12 from top to bottom, because they're divisionless, so you can just start who I think is going to come in last. This is a team with a lot of buzz around them, not all positive buzz, but buzz nonetheless. A lot of question marks heading into this year. Will all of their additions and subtractions, will it work? Will it not work? Time will tell, and I think you know who it's going to be. But in last place in the Pac-12 this year, I'm going to go with Colorado. This is not, Deion slander. This is not, me hating on him. Nothing to that capacity. I think what he's going to do or what he wants to do will take time. And, I don't think the pieces are there yet. He's really, at this point created a ragtag roster from kids all around the country, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to gel. It's not the case with larger programs that predominantly have 80% of their roster come back year over year. Those guys gel, they blend together. This is a case where I think 80% of your roster is new. That's going to take some time, and they have a difficult schedule. I think the Pac-12 schedule starts them off with like USC and Oregon or something like that. Out of conference, they play Nebraska and TCU. It's not an immediate recipe for success in year one. I'm not saying it can never happen for Deion. I think it's a wait and see type of project. I got more faith in Deion as the head coach than I did, with the previous head coach there. I think he can put together some special seasons for Colorado. I don't think 2023 will be one of those special seasons. Looking at the offense, in particular, I think this is going to be the better side of the ball, offense versus defense there. And again, players from all around the country coming in. I like Alton McCaskill at running back. I think he has the potential to be one of the best backs in the conference. I think if it's going to be a run first offense, then McCaskill will be your guy. And the Pac is a very pass heavy conference, so maybe switching it up on teams and controlling the ball more, knowing that there's still a talent gap between you and these top teams. That may be your recipe for success, and you have the guy to do it in McCaskill. I think you have a very talented quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. Coming from Jackson State with Deion, obviously, hasn't proven himself at the FBS level yet, but all the pieces are in place for him to succeed at Colorado. It would not surprise me if Shedeur Sanders ends up as a top 5 quarterback in the conference this year. He's incredibly talented. 40 touchdowns at Jackson State last year, which again, it's an FCS school, so pump the brakes a little bit, but he's still shown incredible skills as a passer at the collegiate level so far, and I expect those skills to translate to his game at Colorado. The receiver room is where I have a little bit more questions than QB or running back. And I just due to the fact that I think Sanders and McCaskill translate better to the conference. The receiving room is it's decent. It's going to be probably middle of the conference in terms of skill set. I think Xavier Weaver comes in and makes a pretty immediate impact for the offense there. But outside of him, I'm curious who ends up being that top dog for Colorado, that additional piece to the puzzle. And in terms of my breakout player, The one I'm going to lean on is actually someone who stuck with Dion, didn't get booted, didn't transfer out, none of that nonsense. So someone who's been in Colorado for a while and knows the program, knows the campus culture, all of those things. And this would be their tight end there, Louis Passarello. So 3-star recruit in the class of 2020, and really hasn't seen the field all that much so far. So taking that all into consideration and looking at what this offense could be, and knowing what the skill set of the players around them are, if Passarello ends up being used more in short yardage situations, and he starts getting used in in 3rd and 3, and it ends up being a 10-yard pass over to him, then it opens up the field a little bit. You don't have to rely exclusively on the arm of Sanders. You don't have to run it down their throat. You don't have to throw it to one or two guys out there. I don't think we expect Passarello to end up as the best tight end in the country, but if he ends up as a legitimate receiving threat out there, or as a blocker to help on the O-line, it opens up the playbook for Colorado. So we haven't seen a lot of Passarello so far. Big opportunity this year to have him come into that spotlight, and I think he'll take advantage of the new coach, the new energy around the program, and have a good year. On the defensive side of the ball, I think they got a good-looking D-line. It's a very experienced defensive line led by guys like Shane Cokes coming in. Jordan Dominic comes in. Derek McGlendon comes in. All of these transfers from all around the place are coming into to Colorado this year. The defensive backs, I think, are unproven, a little on the younger side, so we'll see how that all bubbles up. I think Trevor Woods stayed in Colorado, which I think is going to be very big for Colorado's secondary to have a pretty heavy hitter back there. Miles Slusher comes in as a nickel back. It can be that guy for you. Shiloh Sanders comes in, Sanders. We're seeing a trend here of Dion bringing his kids, but he's talented and has a spot on this roster for a reason. But the room I question the most would be the linebacker room. It's probably the least proven and has the least significant ability to identify your immediate playmaker. And with that in mind, I think you have to take one of those linebackers as your breakout player, and for me it will be probably a butchering of a name here, but Demouy Kennedy. So coming in from Alabama, 4-star recruit in the class of 2020, didn't really see the field down there in Tuscaloosa. New opportunity in in Boulder this year, and again, this is a pro transfer portal move where you come out of high school and think you can take on anyone. You end up at Alabama, and the playing time's not there. The competition is tough. These things happen, and it happens to a lot of players on a lot of great rosters. And Kennedy's looking for his second chance, and he found it in Colorado. The mentality I have is that if you're good enough to get an offer and play for Alabama on defense, you're good enough to play anywhere in this country. So I really look for Kennedy to step up, be one of those leaders that Prime is looking for on defense, and be a playmaker first and foremost. Identify how the play is happening, what his responsibility is, and how he can make an impact for his team. So that's my breakout player on defense will be Demouy Kennedy, and then Louis Passarello on the offense. So moving on to 11th place, another team with a new head coach, another team that struggled last year. I think they're picking up some momentum, but we'll see how it plays out on the field. But maybe some surprising momentum off the field, and that would be Stanford. Stanford has moved on. They're bringing in Troy Taylor as as their head coach. First year for him out there. Looks like he's recruiting really well. From looking at the class of 24, he's putting a lot of special pieces together. But we are focused here on the 2023 year. I think Stanford is an incredibly difficult coaching job to take. due to the academic requirements, due to lack of NIL, due to difficulty in terms of bringing in transfers. Cal and Berkeley are probably two of the toughest jobs in all of FBS. Probably those two, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, and any academically elite university at the Power 5 level, especially a private school, is going to be hard. So I don't envy Taylor's position. I think he has a chance this year to put some things together off the field, which will raise that momentum for 24 and beyond. But looking at the offense in particular, I'm seeing quite a few problems, or not problems, but more so question marks than anything. I don't see any position group out there that stands out to me as this is your guy. Like this is it. Like they got it all put together. It's a very young offense. So again, problems this year, solutions in 24. So this year is going to be rough on the offense. Ari Patu at quarterback will probably end up middle of the conference at most. Not your superstar QB out there, but has a chance this year to really prove himself and take over as a permanent starter. I like EJ Smith on a personal level. When you're, when your father is the greatest running back in NFL history and is in the UF Ring of Honor, I got a special spot in my heart for him. But hasn't proven himself for Stanford just yet. Could do it this year, and could be a big factor to this offense, but hasn't shown us that so far. So we'll see how he does with a new head coach and a new offense out there. The receiver room is where I've got the most questions. They have a pretty good tight end there with Benjamin Urasek, but outside of him, who is Patu going to throw to? Because there's not a lot of experience up there. A lot of younger players, and I think one of them ends up being your breakout player on offense for Stanford, and that would be C.J. Hawkins. So very limited playing time. He was a true freshman last year, playing as a 3-star in the class of 22. Only notable, stat sheet. Only notable stat that came up on his stat sheet is a 20-yard catch against Utah. So, it's Utah. Utah, two-time Pac-12 champions now, but we want to see more of that in 2023. He'll get his opportunity as a slot receiver. I think he's going to be more in that, that short game on offense. Those short slant passes probably. Big opportunity as a more permanent starter. Very curious to see how he puts it all together this year, how he becomes a focal point of this offense and breaks out in his own right. So really looking forward to watching Hawkins play for Stanford this year. I think he's going to introduce some fun opportunities for this offense to keep the ball moving. On defense, this is where I think Stanford is going to succeed a little bit more. They're running things a little different. Looking at how they put this offense together. I like the linebacker room. Between really Gathan Bernadelle is your star back there. The D line will be kind of middle of the road. David Bailey and probably Tobin Phillips are probably your top two guys there. And again, knowing that they play a 2-4-5, these edges like David Bailey kind of playing that linebacker D-line role. But with that all into consideration, I put him on the D-line for the sake of argument here. So David Bailey and Tobin Phillips are playmakers up front. I think Gathan Bernadelle makes this linebacker room one of the best in the conference, but the DBs are where I've got some issues. Very young group, very inexperienced and unproven group. So I look at it, and even the senior on here, is not someone who's played significant time. So what I want to see this year from Stanford is for these younger kids to step up and continue to develop. The player I'm going to take as my breakout player for Stanford's defense is Mitch Leegberg. So, and started as running back, flipped over to safety, and is a 3-star recruit from the class of 2021. So, limited playing time. Can't get past E.J. Smith on the depth chart. Flipped to safety, where I'm guessing he played in high school, and again, so not a lot of defensive statistics to showcase for it so far. I don't know how he's going to look at safety, but I know he'll likely be starting at safety, and gets that huge opportunity to to step up and gets that chance to come into fruition, come into his own right, where he'll be one of those safeties that keeps this offense or keeps this defense together for Stanford. So they may struggle this year. I don't know who their leader back there is, but knowing that this guy's a sophomore, Leegberg could be a pretty consistent player for Stanford's defense for years to come. So looking at Leegberg on defense, and then Hawkins on offense as Stanford's breakout players this year. All right, moving on. So Colorado 12th and Stanford in 11th. We're moving on to 10th place. This is a coach with a lot of momentum. He's got a lot of people excited. I don't think it comes together this year. And just for a clarifying piece, I have Stanford and Colorado in kind of like a league of their own, where teams that are going to struggle. These next 4, in my eyes, are teams that have it, and have it in the sense of just outside of bowl eligibility through bowl eligibility, kind of that strong middle of the pack for the next 4, and you can probably guess who they are, but just the order may be what throws you off. But when it comes to this next team, a lot of momentum around them. I'm recording this on 7/7/23, and they just landed a 5-star player today. So, high school kids are interested. There's a buzz around this program, and I think you know who it is by now. I'm going to take Arizona in 10th. They're right on that 6-win cusp. Whether or not they can put it together this year is going to be up to Jed Fish. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job long term. I know fans want a bowl game sooner rather than later, but he is putting the pieces together for a special tenure for him there. So, and he's a UF grad, so definitely like seeing a Gator succeed, even if it's not in Gainesville. But looking at this offense real quick, good receiving room. Jacob Cowing, obviously, big time receiver, one of the best in the conference. This is going to be a name butchering, so I apologize. Tetaroa McMillan, true freshman last year, put up 8 touchdowns for Arizona, consistently just in the end zone, finding his footing and doing what he needs to do. He's going to add upon it this year. The running game, Michael Wiley's an experienced running back. He adds to that pro-style offense that Fish is running, and will be consistently a part of why Arizona does win games this year. And the breakout player that I'm going to pick, someone who's already broken out in their own right, but really is going to evolve past it, and that's going to be Jaden Delora at quarterback. I'm going to speak exclusively on what he can do on the field, and he's shown us really in pieces the quarterback he can be. So I look at his game against Colorado last year when he put up 484 yards and 6 touchdowns. And I know Colorado was a dumpster fire last year, but those are numbers Caleb Williams could have put up. So if Delora can do that game in and game out, Arizona's going to have a great year. He can run with his legs. He can be a big play runner. Picked up a 34-yard run against USC. Little things like that where he's just moving the ball downfield. And USC defense is I'll say was garbage. We'll see what they look like this year. But, I'm not trying to diminish his success on the field. So if Delora has those games week in and week out, Arizona's offense is going to look very, very good this year. It's going to be the highlight of the team, because as we move to the defense, I think there's a pretty sharp decline in terms of talent and production. So moving on to that defense, this is where I've got some question marks. This is where I don't know where some of these players are going to put it together. The linebacker room is middle of the road. Jacob Banu and Justin Flau are solid in their own rights. The DB room is has those question marks. Gunnar Maldonado, Isaiah Taylor, and Traden Stukes are really your go-to guys, and they're all in that safety nickel position. So, kind of makes sense that they're more aggressive and showcasing their talent all over the field. The D line's where I've got some questions. A lot of turnover kind of everywhere, but I don't know who your leader is out there. I don't look at anyone on this depth chart and think, that's who I want at my nose tackle. That's who I want on my D end. I don't know who it's going to be. So I'm going to take a breakout player, from that D line, knowing that, the odds of someone breaking out are higher as a result of it. This is going to be a transfer, someone coming into the program, coming in from a Pac-12 opponent. This would be Oren Patu. So transfer from Cal, and coming in looking for a new opportunity. And I want to highlight his game against Arizona as the reason why he'll do well for Arizona. It was his only notable stat line from last year, which was a sack that turned into a forced fumble. So he got to Delora, took the ball from his hands, and picked it up. Can't ask for much more than that from someone on your D line. Now just imagine he's not doing it to Delora. That's what Arizona fans have to look forward to this year. This is a guy that was in his last year of eligibility, wants to come in, make a name for himself, and then graduate. But I expect that opportunity. I expect that chance for him to live up to that expectation for him this year. So expect Patu to be a contributor, be someone that establishes himself on this D line. It's an older D line, but an inexperienced D line, if that makes sense. It's a lot of guys who have been there for a while but haven't gotten significant playing time. So Patu is going to be right alongside a lot of guys that are looking to make the most out of this opportunity. So looking at Patu on defense, Delora on offense as your breakout players for an Arizona team that is going to be in that bowl eligibility mix for 2023. Moving on, so to recap, Colorado in 12th, Stanford 11th, Arizona in 10th. I'm moving on to 9th place here. And this is, again, it's one of those teams right in the middle. It's a team that I feel like no one really ever talks about. In terms of, positive or negative, they're just consistently average. And, 9th place in the Pac-12 will go to them this year, kind of, par for the course of what they've seen in the past. This would be Washington State. So, Jack Dickert did a good job last year, got Washington State to a bowl game. I don't know if they're going to go to one this year, but they'll be in contention to go to one for all of this year. They're going to stick by that kind of 6-6 mantra. I don't know if they can ever get above it, but it's not going to be. I don't see bad times ahead for Washington State fans. I think they're going to be consistently average for the future. Looking at the offense real quick, I really like having Cameron Ward at quarterback. I think if he lives up to his expectations, he's just as good as someone like Caleb Williams. You're not going to hear about him because he's up in Pullman, Washington on the Idaho border, and Caleb Williams is in Los Angeles. Caleb Williams plays for USC, a storied, traditional college football powerhouse. Cameron Ward is a transfer that plays for Washington State, who is none of those things. So I like Cameron Ward when he's firing on all cylinders. It's an offense built around him, He's going to have his opportunities. He's got help in the backfield from Nakia Watson. So there are pieces in place for Washington State to have a big year. If this all kind of comes together, the receiving room is where I have some questions, and the receiving room in an air raid offense is realistically probably the most important position group out there. Because outside of Kyle Williams, I don't know who maybe Josh Kelly too. Those are your two guys, but I need to see more of it when you're running four verts on all plays, basically, to use some Madden terminology there. So, with that in mind, I think your breakout player is going to be one of those receivers, and it's going to be DT Sheffield. This is a JUCO transfer coming in, never played a snap for Washington State so far. I trust that Dicker would put Sheffield in an offense to start where he would immediately have an impact, immediately succeed, immediately have all these things come together. And, it's an offense where receivers thrive. So I would look at Sheffield to have a big year. Ward has a big arm, and he's going to throw the ball around. So Sheffield has the opportunity to come in. I don't watch JUCO football. I've said in my last few videos, I assume no one else watches JUCO football unless you go to a JUCO. So I think Sheffield is going to have a big year for Washington State, and knowing that he's coming back next year is going to be big for this program long term. The defense I actually think is going to be pretty solid across the board. I don't see a position group that I look at and think this is bottom half of the pack. I think it's a group where every position group is probably in the top 5 in the conference in some capacity. You can make an argument that one or two are outside the top 5, but I look at it and I see good groups from top to bottom. If you look at the D-line, they got Ron Stone on the end, Brennan Jackson on the other end, 2 powerhouse players that get sacks and force fumbles. That's what you need from your senior leaders out there. Looking at the DBs, you have Jaden Hickson, the safety, Sam Lockett in your other safety, Cam Lampkin and Chal Smith-Wade and your corners. Playmakers galore, like people that know how to step up and lean into their role as leaders out there. And, even the linebacker room, I'm going to pick someone from the linebacker room as my breakout player. You have Devin Richardson as your immediate leader, and it's a 4-2-5, so if he's not my breakout player, then the other one, his linebacker partner out there will be, and that would be Ahmad McCullen. Ahmad Mikolo. There we go. Let's read it before we say it next time. So this guy's a transfer from Maryland, coming with the intent of getting that that fresh start out in Pullman. Really only notable stat line that I picked up was a sack against Rutgers. So I would look for Mikolo. Wow, when you say it once, it sticks with you. Mikolo. I would look for Mikolo to have more of an opportunity at Washington State than he did at Maryland. I would look for him to have a more immediate impact as a starter and someone who's going to be in a position to play down with the D-line, get back with the secondary. I don't know how they're going to use him. I assume probably more run pressure based on how Maryland used him. So I would expect Mikolo to add in as as someone that assists that D line, hits linebackers or hits running backs in the backfield, plugs holes and makes sure that plays stop before they get developed, and as a result of that, the team is better as a result of having someone like him transfer in. So. On Washington State, I look for Mikolo on defense, and I look for Sheffield on offense to be breakout players on a team that's going to be right in that consistently average spot for the rest of the year. All right, moving on. So we have Colorado in 12th, Stanford in 11th, Arizona 10th, Washington State 9th. In 8th place, it's a team with a new head coach, team that fell off pretty hard last year. Not a lot of hype around them this year, but I do think they have the pieces and the resources to succeed on both offense and defense, and at least get to that 6-6 mark or around it, and that would be Arizona State. So Herm Edwards is out, Kenny Dillingham is in. I think he's gonna bring that Oregon kind of mentality and offense with him. It'll be fun to watch. It may not come together this year for them, but I believe Dillingham can build a strong program at Arizona State. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Looking at the offense, they have a talented receiver room. Elijah Badger, is your number one guy back there. Good tight end with Jalen Conyers. I would throw in Xavier Gilroy as another strong receiver out there. So plenty of options in the receiver room. Throw to whoever you want, and it'll come together in a big way. I think your running back is probably close to the middle of the conference, and that would be Cameron Scatabo. And it's really just a matter of finding the end zone more. He's a prolific runner, but I'm just hoping that Dillingham uses him in more of a gets him a chance to score a little bit more. That's really that what we haven't seen so far compared to some of the other backs in this conference. And really outside of that, the breakout player is going to be quarterback by virtue of process of elimination, and this would be Trenton. I'm gonna have a tough time with this name, Trenton. We'll go with Borget. We'll go with Borget. Borget. So ended up starting the back half of the season for Arizona State. They used Emory Jones for the first, probably 6 games of the year or so. But Emory Jones was out. Borget is in. Good game against Colorado, 335 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, that's the type of performance you want to see every game for him as your leader out there. He's a senior. A lot of these receivers are juniors for the most part, so they're going to be excited. They're going to be interested in making this happen for him. But the way I see it, if Borget gets a full year, to start for Arizona State, it will come together for him. So I'll get Borget to make the most of this opportunity and have this come together in a way where he is the starter that Dillingham needs to succeed in year one. Looking at the defense. I'll skip the D-line for a second, and I think you know why I'm going to skip it. I think the linebacker room and the DBs are underrated when it comes to their performance compared to the rest of the conference. So just looking at them, looking at the DBs first. Shamari Simmons is a good safety back there, good playmaker. Ro Torrance at corner is a lockdown guy. Jordan Clark at the nickelback spot. So you have leaders and playmakers all over the backfield or all over the secondary. Not worried about an issue there. In the linebacker room, you got Juwan Mitchell, who I think is going to surprise some people and be one of those better players. In the linebacker room, across all the Pac-12. Travion Brown is another talented player at linebacker. He'll be back there as well. The D-line, where I have the most amount of questions, this will be one of the least proven in the conference, and really outside of Anthony Cooper, find me your next man up, because I'm having a hard time seeing it. But who I think will break out, this will be transfer coming in. This will be on your D-line. It'll be Clayton Smith. So transfer from Oklahoma, 4-star in the class of 21. Got buried in the depth chart there, and didn't end up making it. Further up the didn't end up with more playing time. Is really the point here. Gets new life at Arizona State, and I know those Oklahoma defenses around that time were not good, to say the least. I think Smith would be a Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch commit, And any Oklahoma and SC fan would tell you that Alex Grinch is maybe not the guy for your to be your defensive coordinator. So with that in mind, Smith committed to an Oklahoma program that had pretty lackluster defenses in the past, but he's still good enough to get an offer and play for one of the most prolific Power 5 programs in all of college football history. If he can play there, he can play anywhere. He's taken his talents to Tempe this year with the intention of beefing up this D-line for Dillingham in year one. I think he's capable of it. I think he's going to live up to that four-star expectation and really help Dillingham succeed in year one there at Arizona State. So looking at Smith on the D-line, Bourget on offense as your breakout players for an Arizona State team that I think is going to surprise a few people. Moving on and recapping, Colorado in 12th, Stanford in 11th, Arizona 10th, Washington State 9th, Arizona State 8th. Moving on to 7th, we got a team that struggled last year. The buzz around them is that they're probably going to struggle this year, so kind of similar to Arizona State. I got them a little higher on my list this year than I think a lot of people have. I think I have the opportunity to surprise a lot of people, and that would be Cal. I think Cal ends up at in the 7th spot here. So I think Justin Wilcox has been there for a while, knows what it takes to succeed at Cal in some capacity. I think he's going to bring them back to at least a middle-of-the-road position in this conference. And when you really break down the Pac-12, it really is like two conferences of 6. You have your 6 kind of traditional powerhouses at the top, and then you have your 6 traditional struggling teams at the bottom, at least for the last few years. And I think Cal ends up as the best of the traditionally struggling teams in this conference. If we're starting off with the offense, Jaden Ott is a talented running back and someone that can continue to make an impact for Cal. That can continue to step in and make big plays for this up-tempo spread offense. You need a talented running back to have that all come together. And, with that in mind, I think Ott is your guy back there. But outside of the running back room, I have some questions there. In the receiver room, outside of Jeremiah Hunter, who do you lean on? Who's your number 2? Who's your guy that is going to make plays if Hunter goes down? Because I don't see it in the receiving room right now. The quarterback room is very unproven. And, this will be who I end up taking as my breakout player. Probably the best name for a quarterback in all of college football, Sam Jackson. And, there's no snakes on a plane at Cal this year, but, they got Sam Jackson at QB. This is a transfer coming in from TCU. 32 yards rushing and a touchdown against Colorado was the only notable stat line that I saw. And it was, mop-up time. Chandler Morris went down. Max Duggan, probably was taken out by then because they were beating him so bad. So Sam Jackson was just, killing the clock at that point. So giving Jackson a permanent starting opportunity, for this, for him and for this Cal team, to go to TCU as a quarterback, you have to be talented in some capacity. They've developed quarterbacks fairly well over the last decade or so. So there is something in Jackson that needs to come out more. And I think as a permanent starter for Cal, and being that guy on this offense, it will come out and it will come together. So I look for Jackson to embrace the starting role. Lead Cal to wins, maybe help them get a win that they have no business, getting. But taking Cal back to bowl eligibility and maybe beyond. He's got time. He's a sophomore, so looking forward to watching him over the next few years. On the defensive side of the ball, looking at it from top to bottom, really like this DB room. Just it speaks for itself. Patrick McMorris is one of the best safeties in the conference. He's got Craig Woodson next to him, another phenomenal safety. Um, Noel Williams at corner. There's talent from top to bottom here. I don't expect Cal to be beaten through the air anytime soon. Looking at the D line, and very little of it because it's a 2-4-5 offense. I think Ricky Correa is a special player, but outside of him, we'll keep it as is. I think the D line is middle of the road for this conference. The linebacker room is where I'm curious who's going to step up. I like Jackson Sermon at linebacker. I think he's going to be one of the best backs in the conference and maybe in the country. I think Miles Jernigan is a talented linebacker with him. But outside of those two, it's hard to determine who that next guy will be. And, at least in my eyes, I believe I've found him in the form of a transfer, coming in from Clemson. This would be Sergio Allen. So, 4-star in the class of 2020, played on those Dabo teams, but very sparingly. Didn't make it to the, playing field not all that often, maybe more like special teams. But I anticipate, he'll be in a more permanent starting role for Cal this year. And, if you're good enough to if you're good enough to play for Clemson, it means you were good enough to play for pretty much any team in the SEC or ACC or Big Ten. It means you can come out to Cal and be a pretty immediate big impact player. So I expect Allen to step up. I expect him to have a big year for Cal. And knowing that it's a linebacker-friendly defense, his opportunities are going to come. He's going to be flying all over the field. I assume they're going to use him probably a little bit more, up front, with these DTs. But we'll see how it works. I'm very interested in watching this defense play and come together in that way. And I'm looking forward to seeing Allen as a contributor in that way. So Allen on defense, Jackson on offense for a Cal team that I think is going to, maybe surprise a few people this year. So to recap, Colorado 12th, Stanford 11th, Arizona 10th, Washington State 9th, Arizona State 8th, and then Cal in 7th. So now we're heading to the top half of the conference. And this next team, I'm just going to call them a victim of circumstance. There's no other way to say it. It's a team that, the reality is there's 5 or so teams that are going to be ranked in the preseason top 25 coming out of the pack. They can't all end up there because the pack historically cannibalizes themselves. They all beat each other so that none of them end up going to the playoffs. And, I think realistically this year it's just going to be 1 or 2 teams in particular that just get put on the outside looking in. If I look at, real quick, I think these next 3 teams are all very interchangeable in terms of where you have them. But for 6th place, a team with a lot of momentum going into this year, a lot of hype going into this year, probably considered by many to be one of the best teams in the Pac-12. But I'm going to have them falling off a little bit, and that would be Oregon. So Dan Lanning, came in last year, a pretty horrific start again in that game against Georgia, bounced back very nicely, 10-win season in year 1, looking to build upon it in year 2. I don't think it comes into fruition the way that he wants it to. It will eventually. I just see the schedule is not favorable. They have their regular 9-game schedule. They got Texas Tech on the road. There's trap games everywhere. Oregon's going to drop some games that they probably shouldn't. And it's not going to be necessarily Lanning's fault. Like, it will come together in the future, but I think it's just some growing pains in year 2 before year 3 starts the build up again. Again, at offense, they have a very nice receiver room. Troy Franklin is a legitimately game changing wide receiver alongside Tez Johnson. So 2 real talented players back there. I like Terrence Ferguson at tight end. So not worried about who's going to be throwing the ball around. or who their targets are. We all know Bo Nix, redeemed his collegiate career at Oregon. Went from getting benched at Auburn to tearing it up in the Pac-12. I expect more of the same from him this year. What I do want to see more of out of this offense is establishing the run game. And with that in mind, I think Bucky Irving is going to be the one to do it, and that's going to be your breakout player there. He was 1,000-yard rusher. Last year or some point in his collegiate career. Just looking at last year in particular, really had a good time in his bowl game last year. So that 1,000 yards did not come last year. Then it came in a different year. So I look at that that bowl game against UNC where I imagine that was his first starting debut for Oregon. 149 yards and 2 touchdowns against North Carolina. And I know that North Carolina defense was little to be desired, but 149-2 is still 149-2 against a top ACC team. Established himself as a pass catcher as well, 37 yards and a touchdown against UCLA. So a weapon for Bo Nix out there, someone that can contribute to the pass game as well as the run game. So really looking for Irving to capitalize on that again this year. Looking forward to seeing him grow as a runner and potentially end up as one of the better backs in the conference if it all comes together this year. So and then moving on to the defense. The D-line is the best in the conference. There's no argument, at least in my eyes. Jordan Birch is a phenomenal player. I mean, you can go down the whole line. Brandon Dorless, Popo, Omave, Casey Rogers. Just playmaker after playmaker on the D-line. Not worried for a second there. Good luck running it on Oregon. They're not going to let that happen. Good luck throwing it on Oregon because I don't think they're going to let that happen. I don't think Evan Williams will let that happen. I don't think Tysheem Johnson will let that happen. I don't think Traquezy Bridges will let that happen. I think you talented group of safeties and corners back there. So your move to beat Oregon is going to be in the linebacker room. I think it's the weaker group of this defense, and the linebacker room is not bad. It's probably middle of the pack in this conference, and you do have playmakers back there. You do have Jeffrey Abassa. You do have Justin Jacobs. So I think your breakout player as a result of that ends up being Masefuna. So, and this is a guy who's already established himself in a capacity. I'm just looking to see more of it on the stat sheet, more of that presence. Had a big game against Wazoo last year. Pick 6, had a sack against UNC later in the year. So, I mean, has already made his mark on the Oregon fan base. I imagine, and I don't follow any team outside of probably Florida very, very closely, but I imagine Ducks fans know this name pretty well already. It's time for people in the South, in the East, in the Midwest to know this name. And I expect Funa to have a big year, step up for Oregon, be one of those leaders in the linebacker room, and establish this defense as something that Lanning is looking for. So, yeah, big year for Funa on defense, big year for Irving on offense. Unfortunately, I think Oregon fails to meet kind of that preseason hype, but it's still going to be a respectable year for Oregon across the board. All right, so moving on. Colorado in 12th, Stanford 11th, Arizona 10th, Washington State 9th, Arizona State 8th, California 7th, Oregon 6th. So to our top 5 now. Moving on to kind of a team that is going to be left out of that contender conversation, but a team that always finds themselves contending, always find themselves in a big game opportunity, always find themselves spoiling someone's season, and that's going to be UCLA. So maybe they're spoiling Oregon's season if they end up ahead of them, but I anticipate Chip to do another good job with this team. I know they lost a lot of firepower. A lot of guys, especially on offense, went to the league. So gonna be more of a defensive minded year this year, and that's okay. That comes with the territory. So looking at the offense real quick. I like J. Michael Sturtevant at receiver. I think he's coming down from Cal, so knows the Pac-12 very, very well. The receiver room, at least in my eyes, is probably middle of the road, and you have that leader in Sturtevant as your number one guy. You just need a little bit more depth there, but you have your ace in this, your ace up your sleeve there. So, not worried too much about the receiver room. I don't know who they're going to be starting at quarterback. I think it's going to be true freshman Dante Moore. That will be interesting. If that's the case, thought about having him as my breakout player, but going to lean a different direction. Moore would be. It'd be very interesting to see Chip Kelly with a true freshman out there, but and I think that's what's going to be the case as of right now. That being said, the breakout player I think I'm going to pick is going to be someone who's sat in the sidelines for a good chunk of last year, but is ready to make a name for himself at running back. That would be T.J. Harden. So, true sophomore. Played pretty well in that bowl game against Pitt out in El Paso, 111 yards and a touchdown. 3-star recruit in the class of 22. So now that I don't remember how to pronounce his last name, Zach Charbonnet is in the NFL. It's time for Harden to step up on offense. I think he can do it. I think Chip's got an eye for talent, especially on this offense. And now that he's going to have more consistent playing time, it'll all come together for him. On the defense here, I like the D-line. I think it's going to be top 5 in the conference there. I think you got Gabriel Murphy as your anchor there at the D end. I think UCLA. Well, when I think of them and I think of Chip in particular, I think of kind of more high-powered offenses and teams winning through those means. I think if Chip is smart, they go to a more calculated, defensive-minded strategy of ball control for the offense and then shut down on the defense. That's just me. I don't get paid the big bucks to figure it out, but if I'm him, maybe pivot that way because there's a lot of defensive talent there. The linebacker room, probably a little bit more middle of the pack. You got Darius Muasa as one of the best linebackers in the conference, but he's one of 3 that'll be out there. So if the others can step up to that level, UCLA will be fine in that position. And the DBs are where I think we have a little bit of a drop down in talent, but there's still a lot of playmakers out there. You got Jordan Anderson, you got Kenny Churchwell. I think to a degree, Jalen Davies is a name to watch out for as well. The player I'm going to pick back there is going to be your nickelback. That will be Alex Johnson. So, limited playing time over the course of his career so far. He is going to be a senior, so this is it for him. This is his final season there. Looking at last year, passes defended against Alcorn State, Cal, and Pitt. Alcorn FCS, not a big deal. Cal was Cal last year, wasn't great. Pitt was a good team, and that was their bowl game, so I don't know if that was, some guy sitting out, so he's got to play. But regardless, he looks like he's good in coverage. It looks like he can rise to that occasion. Looks like he's a good tackler, 3 tackles solo against Stanford and Arizona. And again, I know Stanford was Stanford, Arizona was middle of the road last year, but I expect him to have more of a permanent starting role on this UCLA defense this year. Big opportunity for him for all that to come together. So I think teams are going to try to beat UCLA through the air. So there's going to be no shortage of targets going Johnson's way, and it's going to be up for him as a 5th-year senior to rise to that occasion, to help to help UCLA win those games through those means. I think the offense is going to have their own struggles, but if Johnson and the rest of this defense hold down the fort, it'll make Chip's life and make that offense's life miles and miles easier. So Johnson on defense, Harden on offense as your breakout players for a UCLA team that I think is going to defy some expectations this year and maybe put themselves in contention for a second to end up in the conference championship game. So with that, we head to our final four. Colorado in 12th, Stanford in 11th, Arizona 10th, Washington State 9th, Arizona State 8th, Cal in 7th, Oregon in 6th, UCLA 5th. Heading into 4th, I think this is the last of the, just on the outside looking in. So with that in mind, a team that has, consistently risen to the occasion and done what was expected of them probably 9 times out of 10. A team that, faces a challenge in week 1 and really sets the barometer for where they're at for the course of this season. Nothing they can't handle because they've done this year over year. I'm talking about your two-time defending Pac-12 champions, and that would be Utah. So Utah's got that game against Florida in week 1. That'll set the tone for both teams. Kind of see where they're at. Can Utah get revenge this year? Can Florida, step up against a potential top 25 team on the road and beat them in week 1? Time will tell. But looking at the offense first, great running back in Jaquindon Jackson. So someone that comes in, makes an immediate impact. I think it's going to be a fun offense for Utah this year. Maybe a little bit more run heavy than what they're used to, and going to be a lot of fun to watch. You got Cameron Rising coming back. I know he tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl last year. I don't know when he's going to be eligible or ready to return. Some people are saying week 1 against Florida. Some people are saying early October. If that's the case, he's missing 4 or 5 games. Time will tell. He's an athlete for sure. One of the better quarterbacks in the conference, and really excited to see him out there. At least for my case, selfishly, I hope he's out there against Florida because, if Florida wins, I want them to beat the best version of every team. I don't want people saying, "Oh, you only beat them because their QB was hurt." I'm wishing Rising the best. Hope he gets out there in time. And looking forward to August 31st when it all comes together. The receiver room is where I've got some questions. Obviously they lost guys like Dalton Kincaid, who was pretty phenomenal in his own right out there. I do think they have a very talented tight end. With Brant Kuthi, someone who brings that offense together. There's no shortage of talent there. I think Devon Vele is a good number 1 receiver out there as well. With that in mind, I am going to pick a receiver as my breakout player for offense, and that would be Mikey Matthews. So true freshman coming in, and from my understanding will be starting at wide receiver. 3-star recruit in the class of 23. I think historically speaking, that's going to be pretty par for the course for what Utah gets. I don't think they have access to a lot of, California kids. I could be wrong, but I think the majority of people that go to Utah are going to be your 4 and 3 stars. So, I'm sure there's a chip on his shoulder that he wasn't rated higher, and if he's starting as a true freshman, it's going to be an opportunity for him to display, why the schools that passed on him messed up, and why everyone should have given him a look. He's got a talented, experienced quarterback throwing to him. There's a run game behind him, so all of these pieces can work together. Where Mikey Matthews does not need to be the primary target, he just needs to be a target out there. So I think he may be overlooked when teams are going to be telling people, oh, you got to cover this guy, you got to cover that guy, and there's Matthews in one-on-one coverage against a not-so-good safety, and beats him high and dry. So I look for Matthews to be that contributor, to be that true freshman, that stands out for Utah and ties this offense together. Looking at the defense, I like the D line. I think they're top 5 in the conference back there. I think a lot of talent with guys like Van Fillinger, Junior Tafuna. Really playmakers that can get sacks, hit the quarterback, and do what is needed for Utah to prevent big plays from happening right out the gate. I think you got a solid defensive back room, or secondary. Cole Bishop is a very impressive safety in his own right. I think you have a good cornerback there in Travis Broughton. And I think Bishop's other safety there, Sion Vaki, is talented as well. So playmakers in the secondary, playmakers in the D line. The linebacker room is the only one where I'm a little nervous about, and it's really just due to lack of depth there. You have Karene Reed. You got Lander Barton. So 2 talented linebackers in their own right, but the player they've got next to them is someone with very little experience so far, and that's going to be Justin Medlock, my breakout player for Utah's defense. 3-star recruit in 2022, redshirted, barely played at all. Now he's going to be in a pretty permanent, or at least pretty significant starting role for Utah's defense. I think he can live up to it. I think Utah kind of has a youth movement on their hands, especially on defense. I'm looking up and down. I'm only seeing 1 senior starting. So with that in mind, I get looking at 24. Utah's defense is going to be tight. Utah's offense is a little bit older in the sense, but I look for Medlock to be one of these key players on this kind of youth movement on defense that Utah is going through. I think there's enough talent in his position group for him to learn from quickly. He's going to be tested week 1. He's going to be tested, I think, week 3 as they play Baylor. So big opportunities immediately for him to see if he lives up to those expectations or if the lights are too bright. I think he can do it. I think he's a talented kid that can help Utah get significantly better on defense, and time will tell if that comes to be. So Medlock on defense, Matthews on offense are your breakout players on a Utah team that I think is just going to be just on the outside looking in, compared to these final 3 here. To recap before we head into the final 3, it's going to be Colorado in 12th, Stanford in 11th, Arizona 10th, Washington State 9th, Arizona State 8th, Colorado 7th, Oregon 6th, UCLA 5th, Utah in 4th. This leaves 3 teams. By telling you who I have in 3rd, it tells it lets me know who the conference championship game is going to be. And I think all 3 of these teams are legit conference champion contenders. But someone's got to be left out. This is a team that rebounded very quickly last year. Came in with quite a few question marks and quite a few who's going to be doing what, how is this going to work, and rebounded spectacularly. And I don't know a soul out there that thought this was going to happen, and that would be Kalen DeBoer's Washington Huskies. Phenomenal year last year. Credit to DeBoer for everything he did in year 1. Set the bar at exactly what you need, and with that in mind, it's on the backs of a few very talented players. This offense is prolific. I think it's going to go toe-to-toe with anyone in the conference this year. Phenomenal receiver room. Jalen McMillan in the slot, 1,000-yard guy. Rome Odunze, and another receiver, 1,000-yard guy. Jalen Polk, just talent up and down the board. Best receiver room in the conference. Call it what it is. Cameron Davis, one of the best runners in the conference. 13 touchdowns is nothing to laugh at. This is a high-power, high-flying offense, And I think your breakout player in this case, and he definitely broke out last year. This is on the national level now. We're talking Heisman finalist here, Michael Penix. Looking at what he's done, I mean, game against Arizona, 516 yards and 4 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns against Washington State. I cherry picked the best of the best. But I mean, the kid had 4,600 yards last year, 31 touchdowns. I mean, like, you can't ask for more as a Washington Huskies fan. He's 1 year away from, going down in Husky history. If this all comes together, he could be one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had. Really high on him. Really think he rises to the occasion, and sets himself apart from not just the rest of the conference, but maybe the rest of the country. I don't think the team as a collective has enough to get over that hump and into the conference championship game. If they do, it's going to be because of the performance of Penix. On defense, this is where there's definitely a drop back, but with that in mind, your offense can score at will. So we'll see if the defense can just hold on enough to give the offense their time. Good-looking linebacker room, powered by Alfonso Tuputala and Idifuan Alofosio. 2 talented linebackers. Ulofusio is all over the field. Tuputala is more in run coverage. So, one can lean up a little bit more. One can play back. The field gets covered, but it's a very talented group that understands exactly what they need to be doing on the field. The DB room is solid. Definitely leaders back there. Asa Turner, Jabbar Muhammad. Take your pick from there. Mishael Powell, Dominique Hampton. I feel like I'm just reading the depth chart at this point, but I'm having a hard time narrowing it down to who your one guy is. I know I've talked to some of these last few teams. I'm looking at them and say, who is your, I don't know who your leader is. They're all leaders back there, so tough to just narrow it to one. The D-line, I think there's a little bit of a question mark behind them. So no, not quite as polished or experienced. There is talent there, really. Braylon Trice, and then Tuli. I apologize in advance. Latuli Gasanoa. So definitely talent there. I mean, Trice is a 10 sack edge in the past. So I mean, how many teams have that coming back with them, and how many of them are just juniors? So that's going to be huge for Washington. I think your breakout player comes from a nose tackle role, and it's going to be Ulumu Alai. So, looking at him over the course of last year, missed 4 games. So, either be injury or just, not making the depth chart, whatever it may be. Pass defended against Kent State, and I know Kent State is not a world beater, but you got to get your name on the scoreboard somehow. I look at what Ale could do, give him 4 more games, and kind of watch this all come together. So I expect Ale to have a more consistent, role in this D line. I expect him to play with intent and purpose in his last season. This is a very senior defense. I'm just looking up and down the line. I'm seeing probably 4 players that aren't seniors. So these guys want to go out with a bang. I expect that motivation for all. I expect them to want to make it to the conference championship, go to a playoff, or go to the Rose Bowl, whatever's available for them. And it's going to take that dedicated focus from a guy like Ale to bring this defense to that next level, and I think he's capable of doing it. So Ale on defense and Penix on offense are going to be breakout players for a Washington team that is going to be in contention for a playoffs for a conference championship spot until the last week. So with that, it gives us our final 2. Just to recap: Colorado in 12th. Stanford in 11th, Arizona in 10th, Washington State 9th, Arizona State 8th, Cal in 7th, Oregon 6th, UCLA 5th, Utah 4th, Washington 3rd. And that brings us to our final 2. So that gives us, you know, Oregon State. So a team that I think a lot of people are, kind of sleeping on. A team that people have towards probably the bottom half of the top 25, but don't put them in the same league as, everyone else. And then USC, who I think everyone is predicting to win the conference. I think everyone is saying it's a no-brainer. They got Caleb Williams. They have all these talented, talent players from top to bottom. So that's going to be your conference championship game. I'll start my preview of USC first. Obviously, Lincoln Riley comes in, shakes up the world, brings a Heisman winner with him. Obviously it's going to be offense first and foremost. They're going to score 45, 50 points a game, every single time they play. And that's the case. Caleb Williams is still Caleb Williams, still in a very legitimate chance to repeat as a Heisman winner. It's tough to pick him over the field, but I understand if your choice would be him over everyone else at this point. I understand completely. He's going to be in that Heisman contention, in the conference championship game contention, for the entire year. And, it's definitely going to be one of the most explosive offenses that Lincoln Riley's ever had. I think they've got a good run game this year with Austin Jones, just by virtue of guys who can find the end zone. He is one of them. He is someone that can contribute to the offense just as much as everyone else can. And by process of elimination, my breakout player on offense is going to have to come from the receiver room, and it's also just by virtue of how often USC throws. It's air raid. They're just chucking it every single time they can, and that's evident by a guy like Dorian Singer, who had over 1,000 yards, Mario Williams, who's a 5-touchdown cat. There's talent up and down, and the player I think is going to benefit the most from that is actually going to be a tight end, and it's going to be Lake McCree. So the youngest player on this offense that'll be having some sort of production. Touchdowns against Stanford and Cal last year, and I know it was Stanford and Cal, but finds his way into the end zone as a redshirt freshman last year. That's big for the confidence. 31-yard catch against Notre Dame, and last game of the season, big opponent in the big stage, gets it done in prime time there. So looking forward to watching McCree play, in all 12 games and beyond for USC this year. He's going to get his opportunities just by virtue of USC is going to have the ball in their hand. 40 minutes a game? No, maybe not that much. But they're just going to be scoring at will to ensure that it's going to be offensive brute force. It's not air raid. It's just we're going to ram it down your throat any way we can. McCree will be a part of that. He'll put it all together for USC and be one of the many talented players that we see up and down this offense this year. On defense, I think the defense takes a pretty significant jump in year 2 of Lincoln Riley. I like the linebacker room a lot. I think they brought in the players that they need. They have Mason Cobb now. I think he's coming in from Oklahoma State. Talented guy out there. You got Eric Gentry, Jamil Muhammad. So no shortage of talent this year. Could be the best linebacker room in the conference, and that's a big contrast to what they've had in the past. I think they've got a talented DB room. I think Bryson Shaw and Christian Roland Wallace. Those two combined with Kalen Bullock, you got corners and safeties that can make the plays that are needed. So, I think you're gonna have a tough time scoring on them through the air. I think the linebackers can play back, they can play up, whatever is needed from them. I think the D-line is where you have the most amount of questions, and you got to find a playmaker, quickly. And I think the transfer portal gave them what they needed in the form of Georgia transfer Bear Alexander. I know a lot of Georgia fans were pretty high on this kid. He just couldn't crack that depth chart, and now he's got a chance to do that at USC. Had sacks against Georgia Tech and TCU last year. TCU being the national championship game. He's got the ring that Caleb and Lincoln want. So, got that leadership, especially as a younger player on this defense, has that experience, has that leadership quality that this defense needs. And as a result of that, I think he's going to break out in a pretty big way. If Kirby is known for anything at Georgia, it's for building these beasts of a defense, and he can identify defensive talent like the best of us can. And he thought Bear would be that guy, and if Bear's coming to USC, he's still got that Kirby seal of approval with him. So look for Bear Alexander and Lake McCree to have big years for USC this year as they make it back to the conference championship game with victory on their mind. And now we'll do Oregon State before picking a winner. Phenomenal year last year by Jonathan Smith. One of the best years in Oregon State school history. I watched them beat the brakes off the Florida Gators in the Las Vegas Bowl. It was disheartening, but now I'm kind of rooting for them in a sense where if they're going to beat us, then go on and beat everyone. Have a good time out there in Corvallis. You got DJ Uyunglele transferring in from Clemson, so I think he's just a guy that needs a change of pace and a change of scenery. If Michael Penix could do that last year, coming from Indiana and light up the world, why can't DJU do that in Corvallis? Why can't he be that guy for Oregon State this year? I think he can. I think he's got a good running back, back there in Damian Martinez. True freshman last year, almost had 1,000 yards. He's going to look to hit that mark this year. I think he's going to hit it and then, really show out why Oregon State can continue to dice people up. I'm looking at the receiver room as your opportunity for a breakout player. A lot of talent has moved on from Oregon State last year, but I think part of it, especially in the receiver room, is it wasn't a pass heavy offense last year, so it's been tough to evaluate how good these receivers are. Because I don't know who your guy is right now. Is it Silas Bolden? Is it Anthony Gold? Who's your number one? I don't know offhand. But, mirroring USC for a second, I think your breakout player, for Oregon State will go to the tight end position, and that's going to be Jake Overman. So, 3-star recruit in the class of 2020. Not a very notable stat line so far. 2 catches against Stanford and Colorado, but and Stanford and Colorado are, nothing special. All of these stats are just people beating up on Stanford, Colorado, Arizona. Love to see 2 catches against USC and Oregon. That'd be a fun little line there. But, I think with an established quarterback and an offense that, runs 2 tight ends, Overman will be a focal point of it by virtue of defenses will have to make him a focal point. He's not going to be, Uyunglele's, number one option out there, but he needs to be a option or an option, and he will be an option. So I look for Overman to make a name for himself, to showcase, why he's on this team, what he can do for Oregon State on the offense, and find the back of the end zone, do what he needs to do to keep this offense moving along, and as a result of that, they'll be out in Las Vegas competing for a conference championship. And then on defense here, I think your D-line has a few leaders there, really Sione Lolohea and James Rawls in particular. It's a very very senior defense. A few juniors there, but generally a lot of age and experience out there, which will be good for keeping keeping the ball in your offense's hands if your defense is out there stopping everything. The defensive backs, you got Keaton Oladapo, Ryan Cooper, and Akili Arnold. So again, talented pieces. I just think there's really a depth issue on defense across the board where you have 2 or 3 players in each position group that are really good, and then the rest I don't know how to evaluate as much because we haven't seen them as much. The linebacker room being the biggest example is this, where outside of Easton Mascarenas, Arnold. Outside of him, I don't know who you pick from this group as your top guy. I'm going to pick my breakout player from that linebacker group, and it will be John Miller. So, 3-star from the class of 2020. Only notable stat line from last year was a pass defended against Arizona State, but in real trial by fire mentality, Miller is going to be required to step up. He's going to be someone that this defense is forced to lean on. And as a true junior, someone who hasn't had, who's in year 3 and has been in this program for a while, he has the knowledge and he has the capability to step up. It's going to come down to just game day readiness and athletic ability. If he can rise to that occasion, I think he's going to do it. I think he's going to be someone that pairs nicely with this linebacker group. Probably plays back into coverage a little bit more. That's where it looks like he seems to be a little bit more comfortable. And when it all comes together, Miller's going to have a big year on an Oregon State team that shocks the world and makes it to Vegas. So look at Miller on defense, Overman on offense as your breakout players for Oregon State. So now comes the time. How do we? Who are we picking? Are we going to pick the upstart underdog, the one that's used to being on the outside looking in, or are we going to pick the mighty Titan favorites there, the ones that everyone in the world is looking at it to put their money on right now? And I'll tell you this much: the team I have winning the Pac-12 this year is USC. I've been picking enough underdogs here and there. It's time to go with a favorite. And no disrespect to Oregon State, I think they're going to have probably the best season in school history. But USC is locked and loaded from top to bottom. I think their defense is fixed, and they're going to be not just in the in the conference championship contention. I think they're going to be contending for a playoff spot when it's all said and done. But no disrespect for Oregon State. You got a lot of talent out there, but USC is just it's one of the most top to bottom talented programs in the country this year. So, all right, so that will wrap up my 2023 Pac-12 Conference Championship predictions. Tune in next time as I move over to the SEC. A conference I know very, very well, and we'll do the same thing with all 14 of them before it turns into a 16-team conference. Didn't even mention it's the last year for UCLA and USC in the Pac-12. So guess USC is leaving with the hardware and going and bringing it to the Big Ten. But that concludes this episode. Thank you all for tuning in, and looking forward to having you watch the next episode.